How do you make your decisions?
I think most of them are subconscious, aren't they?
Best number of people for decision making is either 5 or 7. But with 5 and 7, you should have 2 or 3 non-experts in that group. If they are all experts, they're very, very unlikely to change their opinion if they disagree.
Is it becoming more difficult for leaders, for anyone, to make decisions?
Is it becoming more difficult? Yes. And I think that is because we've moved from the age of orthodoxy into the age of uncertainty and ambiguity.
Hello, I'm Chris and welcome to Sparks, a series by Interactive Workshops. In every episode, we spark something in work and life, from how to spark collaboration, to how to spark commercial targets, to how to spark decision-making. Jonna, can we make some decisions?
Let's do it. Let's be decisive.
I've decided that's going to be our topic.
Who are you going to get as your expert/guest on this show, Christopher?
I'm going to get you, actually, if that's all right.
That's a big, bold decision.
That's quite. Is it risky?
It's risky, yeah, because you never know. I never know what I'm going to say.
That's true. That's very true. But here you are once again. Thank you, Jonna, for joining me. We're going to dive straight into it. Decision making. What kind of decisions are we making here?
Well, first of all, asking me how I am.
Yeah. Can decide to do that, or might decide not to.
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, really well, thank you. Fired up, ready to go for the podcast.
Yeah, great to be in the Sparks studio again.
Yeah.
Chris, it's going to be an interesting topic today, isn't it? Decision making. How do you make your decisions?
I mean, I think most of them are subconscious, aren't they? I think we know from research that a lot of it is just going through the motions of, did I really decide what I put on today? Did I really decide what to have for breakfast? Or was it just there? Was it just what I did yesterday? A lot of them are just part of routine and process, and they're subconscious.
Yeah, isn't that a good job? I mean, when I did my psychology degree, little 20-year-old cognitive scientist there at the University of Exeter, I was fascinated to realise that a lot of the decisions that we make are habituated, heuristic, the rule of thumb decisions, automatic. And the great thing about that is that it doesn't take any brain power. If, for example, the classic example, if you really had to think about how to get to work every day and try and decide, you drive down the road in your bike or in your car, and at every junction you had to decide, should I turn left or right or go straight on? And then the next one, should I go left or right, turn straight on? And then the traffic lights, should I actually stop even though it's red? And then the pedestrian, should I let them cross or should I just drive straight on? I mean, if you had to really think about that, you wouldn't get very far in life.
No.
Similarly, actually, if you go to a restaurant, a lot of people, the way they make decisions in restaurants, I don't know how, I don't want to give this away. When you go into a restaurant, let's say you go to Pizza Express.
Yeah. I went there on the weekend, actually.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What are the different ways that you might... Did you go to there?
Yeah.
Did you?
I did.
Did you?
Yeah.
That's good.
Day night.
How did you choose what to have?
We looked at the menu. So you've got that. You've got that information.
So you've got visual.
Yeah, you've got that
card.
visual card. All the things that they offer.
Yeah.
That are food. They give to you in a long list.
There's a long
so you
list.
Look through the list, and a lot of it is choosing what we know we like.
Yeah.
Safe.
Okay.
Yeah. I choose something for me, which is my main.
Okay.
My wife chooses something for her.
Do you remember what you had?
I had the Fiorentina pizza.
Okay. Have you had that before?
Yes, I have had that before.
How often? Every time you go to the Pizza Express, roughly what percentage of times you get that Fiorentina pizza again and again?
Oh, it's 1 in 4 probably.
Okay, 25%.
Yeah.
What are your other choices on that menu?
Oh, there's a lot of other choices. I mean, with every one, you've got the choice of the Romana base or not. So
Always
there's that
the Romana
flexibility.
base,
Yeah, that's what I went for on the weekend. The American classic pepperoni.
Okay, what percentage of time do you have that?
It's a smaller percentage, but that's increasing. Pepperoni's going up in my pizza ranking.
Okay, and how
to
often
start
do you get
pizza is
something
entirely
completely
different
random?
episode. If there's something new on the menu, I do like to try it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is great. So you've got heuristics, you've got your Fiorentina.
Yeah.
If there's something new on the menu, you're probably going to have that. Does that trump the Fiorentina?
It probably does. If it sounds good, I'll try the new thing.
And then what's the criteria for the American hot or pepperoni, whatever it was?
Basically, if I'm feeling it, if that's the one that takes my fancy. If I'm in an American mood, want some of the feelings of being in New York, that's the one I go for. Yeah.
Well, isn't this fascinating? I mean, how human beings make decisions is one of the most fascinating things.
Yeah.
Even in your little story, you've gone to Pizza Express.
Yeah.
Why?
It was the best available restaurant in mine and my wife's opinion.
Yeah.
On the given day.
How often is that the best restaurant?
It's probably not always the best restaurant, but I think we choose it quite a lot.
Quite a frequent choice, isn't it? Yeah.
It's a mutual.
We are
thing
very
we
habitual
like.
creatures.
Yeah.
We're very habitual. I mean, let's think about it. If you were to go about your date night like this, you walk down the road, and you've just moved to Bristol last year, didn't you? So let's imagine that you just go each shop, each restaurant. You walk down the road, and each one you go in. And then the next week you go in the next one, and then the next week you go in the next one, and the next week the next one. That would be completely bonkers.
Yeah, I'll tell you what else is bonkers for in this context.
Yeah.
Date night. We actually did this once, and I don't know whether I'd recommend it, but what we did was every decision you make. So you leave the house, but then every decision you make from that point on, you take it in turns as to choose.
Good, yeah.
So rather than trying to choose the day night, where do we go? Do we walk? Do we get the tube? Which restaurant? Do we pick that now? How far are we going to go? Are we going to get in the car, or are we just going to try and walk somewhere? Rather than make all of those decisions before you left the house, you just leave. And then I choose whether to get on a bus or walk down the street.
Yeah,
and then when you get to the end of the street, it's the other person's choice.
So that's very playful, isn't it? And,
Yeah.
I guess what I'm alluding to is that a lot of our human decision making is based on heuristics, and this is what I loved in my degree. It's like, okay, so our schema, it's called our mental process schema for how we go out for dinner with our partner is pretty straightforward. We go out to one of the restaurants we pretty much like, or we've been to before, or we've recently had recommended. Maybe it opened a bit like the new pizza. Then we normally pick one of the things we've had before. Most people do that.
Yep.
It's quite, if you were to go into a restaurant and pick things that you don't even know what they are, that's quite a bold strategy. But you're doing that with the new thing, but it's got the word new next to it. So you've got a little, and we'd like to follow these patterns. The same for breakfast, the same actually for work. We go into work, we like to have the same meetings, we do the same things, we like to sit in the same desk, we like to speak to the same people. And the reverse is also true, that when we create for ourselves, like you have a methodology of escaping that, we feel like we're getting really stimulated.
Yeah.
That's what, there's a thing called a holiday, isn't it? Where we wake up in a different bed.
Yeah.
With a different view, with a different breakfast, different time zone, different weather.
Yeah.
And we're like, wow, this is really good for us, isn't it? So I guess what we're both saying is that heuristic decision making is quick, fast, and lowers mental load.
That's just one area of decision making, right?
Yeah. But the process by which we make decisions, very often it's this kind of heuristic decision making.
In that way, yeah. What about the things that maybe really matter? I think pizza really matters, but there's probably some bigger things of life that we're deciding on.
Yeah, do you know what, Chris? It's interesting though. So we do a lot of work in business, don't we, with leadership. We do a lot of work where we're working with big companies. This is my observation after many years of doing this. I feel that the companies that we go into that are struggling with decisions, I don't think companies really make that many brave decisions. If they did, I think they'd go bankrupt. So brave has to equate to somehow risky, otherwise it's not that brave, right?
Yeah.
If you keep taking risky decisions, what's going to happen?
One of them's going to go badly wrong, presumably, at some point, if you keep doing it every time.
So if you were to take a 50-50 decision, the first time, we're tossing a coin, 50-50, and the first time you win, right? And then you do it again, and you lose. That's what should happen. If businesses take lots of risky decisions, brave decisions, I don't think they're going to be very successful. But those decisions are dialed up in our mind as, that's what genius is. And actually, I don't think business is about genius like that. I think businesses and organizations, sensible commercial organizations, they're actually trying to maximize their success. And to do that, they're actually trying to avoid taking brave decisions and in general play things safe. But that isn't the narrative that we put about what makes great business or great leaders. Trust me, if you work for a business that always took brave decisions, you would be really annoyed in 3 months' time because they'll keep taking risky decisions.
Yeah.
And we don't really, business is set up for sustainable maximizing of profits, not short-term maximizing of profits.
So we actually don't really want to embrace the narrative that we're surrounded by, that we should take risks and we should make big risky decisions as much as possible.
Well, we do need to keep making decisions, but my subtle and sophisticated point here is pretty much most business decisions that we make should be ones that other business people would also make as well.
Yeah.
Because they should be kind of decisions that wise people, sensible people would look at and say, yeah, that's a good decision. If we keep making the outlier, we will eventually come unstuck probably quite quickly.
Yeah. That's interesting, isn't it? That it goes against that narrative that you should do something as a business that no other business would do.
Yeah, but what's interesting about it is also how much time senior executives spend in decision making and meetings and discussion. We have our board meeting, don't we? And I consider it board by name, board by nature. Why do you think that is?
Getting stuck on decisions.
But we never make any interesting ones, really, because that's not the point of a board meeting. Is not to turn up and say, plan A, right? Plan B. Oh, plan B, plan C. Oh, this ridiculous idea that we've got that might never work. Let's do that. That's not really what board meetings are for.
No, more often they're for making the sensible decision that most businesses would do.
Yeah, other. Yeah. We even have non-exec directors who come in from other businesses that know nothing about the businesses they're working in particular, specifically to try to help them make sensible decisions and not make the crazy ones.
The wild ones. Yeah. It's interesting. And I'm wondering about our ability to make decisions. Is that something that's largely based on personality, or is that something that is just we have grown the skills to varying degrees?
I don't know. I think personality plays a big role in it, Chris. I, for example, do like new things. So I have a bias towards exciting stuff. And in fact, one of my biggest learnings as a leader was the need to be boring. Because you can't keep changing the playground all the time. So I do think personality, if you go to a financial advisor, for example, and start talking about your pension, the first thing they'll ask you is, what's your risk appetite? Are you happy to have your pension mainly in quite risky stocks, but that might have a high yield? Or have you got a very low risk appetite and you'd like to have your pension in a very safe fund that you can't lose your money? And I do think that plays into the types of decisions we make at work. But actually also work-based decision making is very much a social activity, isn't it? It's got other people. And so there's something about the interplay of those personalities that also affects the type of decisions that can get made.
Yeah. So all of our personalities are contributing to the collective decisions of companies and our individual decisions as people.
Yeah, exactly.
Given how uncertain the world is, volatile, we could talk about VUCA, is it becoming more difficult for leaders, for anyone, to make decisions?
Is it becoming more difficult? Yes. And I think that is because we've moved from the age of orthodoxy of businesses and business decisions into the age of uncertainty and ambiguity. We can run back over the last 5 years and list multiple world events that have changed markets, landscapes. In the UK, we've had, I think, 4 prime ministers in 5 years. And we've got an election next year. In the world, we've had health scares, wars, financial crises. But then you've got to look back and say, well, are those things, were they not happening before? And they probably were. But I think the thing here is that the ambiguity that we face means that we never really know exactly what's going to happen. And I also think technology speeds this up. So like if you think about the age of industrialization and manufacturing, you've got to decide to build a factory that makes cars. Yeah. Building the factory takes 2 years. And then that car will be in production for 7 years. So you can make a decision knowing that basically there's a 10-year framework on which you're going to recoup your investment or you're going to have to live with your decision. Whereas if you think about technology, it can change so quickly and the investment cycles might be quite short and the market might be changing quite quickly. And therefore, what we do today, we could change tomorrow and the day after. And so we don't really have to stick with our decisions in the same way. And neither can we because the world's moving on and changing. So I was discussing this recently with a senior exec at a FTSE company over dinner. And he was reminding me, and I found it very helpful, you just got to keep taking decisions in this environment. The worst thing you can do is procrastinate, and then you've done neither thing. You've neither done the good thing, nor the right thing, nor the wrong thing. You've done nothing. And business is not about doing nothing.
Yeah, and we could say that in itself is a decision that has been made
without
much conscious thought.
It's perhaps more of a heuristic, isn't it? A rule of thumb. Keep making decisions, keep driving things forward.
Yeah.
But you might make mistakes, but just keep going.
And what other kind of decision making is there? We've talked a little bit about the heuristic type of decisions. What else is there?
So the heuristic type, I think, is how we make most decisions. There's another sort of subset of that, which is value-based decision making. And if you think about values, they're like an ideology. Like some people have got values that come from their family, some from perhaps a religion that they subscribe to, some from a book that they've read. They've taken on certain values. And this sort of moral value-based decision making tends to be pretty rigid and quite impossible to overcome. And so those decisions are also quite quick. Each of us in kind of doing the right thing, those decisions are probably not that difficult either, even if the consequences of those decisions are difficult. We've already, through our value framework, we've accepted that we're going to stick with this. And then we've got logic-based decisions. And again, I studied logic. I've got a little puzzle for you.
Okay.
But a lot of people are not very good at logic. And therefore, this is, I think, social media land is like this.
Yeah.
A lot of things that people are making decisions on, they're not very good at logic.
Yeah.
So I've got a little logic puzzle for you. Okay. 5 people were eating apples. Yeah.
Yeah.
A finished before B.
Okay. Yeah.
But behind C.
Okay.
So there's persons A, B, and C.
Yep.
A finished before B,
Mm-hmm.
but behind C. Yeah.
Yep.
D finished before E. Yeah. But behind B.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, can you think about what order those people ate their apples in?
Man. So E was before
A finished before B.
Yeah.
But after C.
Uh-huh.
So there's A, then B. A finished before
Blowing
B.
my mind.
A finished after C though.
Yeah.
So A finished before B,
Yeah.
but after C. Yeah.
It's really blowing my mind.
Okay. Who's
Just putting the letters out
the
of order.
first to finish out of those 3?
I've got no idea.
Okay. A finished before B. Okay. Who's the first to finish out of those 2?
A finished before B. So A is before B.
Yeah. A is before B.
If you want them in a chronological order, yeah.
But
After C.
A finished after C. So who
So
do you think
C,
finished
A,
first?
B.
Yes, Chris.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
C,
then we've
A,
got
B.
D and E coming into the
Yeah.
mix.
Okay. So D finished
before E.
Yeah.
So we know that it goes DE, but
Yeah.
we don't know whether it's before
but-
cab or
but
after cab.
D finished behind B.
Behind B. So
Yeah.
that slots in. Do we know whether that's after C?
Yeah. Because we know that B finished after C.
So it's directly after. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So C, A,
Yeah.
B, D, E.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a kid's logic problem. And like you,
I failed.
when I first looked at it, I was like, okay, right, hang on a minute. So
Yeah.
I think if we come back to business decisions, you very rarely in a business meeting do people start to look at the prepositions and the logic behind them and try to put them together. For some reason, logic in decision making at work is very low. If you work in an investment house or in a bank, there's obviously this kind of logical thinking taking place. If we do X and Y and then Z, what's the interrelationship? But in general business meetings, it's very rare for people to try to tease out the logic. I was in a meeting recently where one of the people in the meeting was saying that we wanted to make a data and scientific based decision. We were going to do that by running a trial, and the trial was going to exclude one of the possible options of how things could end up. But in their mind, that was scientific and logical. I was pointing out to them, if it's scientific, you have to include other options that you don't want to win in that trial. It's logical. You can't prove your case that A doesn't work by running B and C and saying that it does work. So, this kind of logical decision making, you rarely see people challenge each other on the logic of it and say, does your conclusion follow from your premises? Have you got the logic mapped out? And we can see why, because even with a stupid kids thing, it's quite hard to do. Yeah.
So the easy way is just to go with your gut and
just social decision making,
yeah.
Talking around it. Actually, more like if we were at the pub and we're going to order one meal that we're all going to have, and we just talk about it, and we just all decided to order that Fiorentina pizza again. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
there's little logic in the pub decision making.
Shall we stay for another round?
Yeah.
I think most business meetings are a bit like that. Maybe there's also some hierarchy involved. And a lot of people wait for the senior person to say what they think, and then everyone just agrees with that.
Right.
Whereas if you were to follow the proper process, you start with the junior person, and that's how you get your Delphic decision making that we use here.
Yeah. How do you not become very boring in that process? Because so far we've said the best businesses will make the boring but sensible decisions. The best decision makers actually will not go with a whim or go with their gut, but they'll use logic. How do we then find the excitement from that process?
Well, let's think about when Cisco bought Splunk. That's a good decision.
Yeah.
So Cisco, the company that makes the internet, also Interactive Workshops, one of our top clients, NASDAQ listed, they decided to spend 28 billion of their own cash.
Quite a lot of cash.
To buy Splunk. Yeah.
Big decision.
What is Splunk?
I don't know what Splunk is.
So Splunk is a big data platform that simplifies the task of collecting and managing very large amounts of data. So can you see that the decision to spend 28 billion of your own cash on an acquisition of Splunk, that's quite a big decision.
That's massive. Yeah.
That's a decision, isn't it?
It's huge. Yeah.
How would you make that decision?
I think you'd want some kind of consensus, wouldn't you, at board level that you're going in the right direction?
Yeah.
You'd want to know similar sized companies, those kind of acquisitions. Do they work? How have they gone for Cisco before?
Yeah. So have you got track record?
Track records.
It's competence. Your competence at making that kind of decision is very key. Good. Chris, big. Don't worry about the logic problem, Chris. Big red, big green tick for that. Yeah.
You'd be thinking about
have we got the competence?
Yeah.
If we were to do this, have we got the competence to live with it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Can we make those acquisitions? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And what's the risk if it goes wrong? What's the can we live with the consequences of if that doesn't work out? Is that going to be okay?
Yeah. I mean, if you'd bought WeWork when it was listed at 141 billion, and then it's now basically worth nothing, you'd be pleased that you didn't buy that, wouldn't you? But there's a good question, like, what am I actually getting here? So your first question is the competence.
Yeah.
And could we make a success of this if we did it? That's quite a good question. That's the question I had to think before I proposed, actually. Like, between the two of us, can we make a success of this?
Yeah, you got to think about that, haven't you?
Buying a house, whether or not the bank finances it or whether we've got the money, once we've done it, can we pay the mortgage and can we make a success of living here? So that the competence part is key for business. And actually, one of the things I was trained when I was learning my craft was all a business really is a set of competencies. So Airbus make aircraft and satellites, and they don't make cars. And if you think, well, a car has got to be, there's more of them, they're simpler to make than airplanes, and they're very popular, it seems, cars. Well, why doesn't Airbus make cars? But it's because their competence is in aerospace. So I guess Cisco has to think about the Splunk acquisition. I think, do we have what it takes to make a success of a big data platform? Essentially, after we bought this, will it become more or less valuable? If we're not competent, it's going to become less valuable.
Yeah.
And if we are competent, it's going to become more. Obviously, they'll have used a lot of evaluation models and due diligence, but there's another way of thinking about this question, which is really interesting to me, which is evaluating not doing it. So if you don't buy Splunk for $28 billion of your own cash, one thing you've got is cash in the bank. Do you want cash in the bank as a company? Not really, no, because that cash is going down in value every day.
Yep.
And in a high inflation environment, which we've been in for the last couple of years, that cash is going down by 10% a year. So 28 billion this year, you might lose 3 billion just of not spending your cash every year.
Yeah.
So you've got to do something with it. And then the other thing is, what if we bought something else? And if you buy 28 billion of big company, that's pretty quite valuable. But if you buy 28, imagine if you bought 10 companies for 2 billion, would you make a success of that? Well, I like that. That one's hedged, actually, because 10 companies for 2 billion, you only need to make a success of a few of them. But you could still lose billions. Buying 28 billion, it's not a bad decision in the end. But when you look into boardrooms, at the very top level, there's these kind of discussions happening. But lower down in organisations where we spend more of our time, a lot of the decisions that are being made really you should just go with the most obvious and, dare I say it, boring approach.
Yeah, sadly, probably true. Perhaps we should carry it. We're not really saying go with your gut there. It's just go with the logically the most sensible, most obvious.
Well, going with your gut there's a great book written, isn't there? Think Fast, Think Slow. I think big decisions, your gut's a good indicator because you're getting multi-sensory feelings about whether this is a good idea or not. But the real question is, do you understand the decision you're trying to make?
Yeah.
And that's my point about the logic. Going with your gut is hard to get paid for. It's hard to have that as a business decision. That's not at the easiest rationale to put into a set of minutes. Chris's gut said this. Jonna's gut said that. It doesn't, that's not really, we've got to use some kind of formula, some kind of evaluation tool. And we could also take a vote, couldn't we? So we could use a decision-making process. We talked about senior stakeholders influencing everything, autocratic. I fall into that. Sometimes we could do a consensus-based decision where everyone has to agree before we do something. We might take a vote, a democratic decision. So there's lots of processes to use as well. And again, if we look in general in business decision making and in general in meetings, there isn't one of those running. So often it's just a conversation and the kind of best or worst idea gets agreed, which I always find funny. I don't. Why did you do that?
Yeah, that is a funny quirk of the meetings we find ourselves in.
Yeah, and we go to a lot of meetings.
We go to a lot of meetings. Yeah. Why do we find making decisions challenging?
Well, some of them need an expert.
This is true.
Do you want a good joke?
Yeah, go on.
My dad used to tell me this as a kid. X is an unknown quantity. Spurt is a drip under pressure.
Is that what an expert is? Unknown quantity of drip under pressure.
Yeah. No, I mean, the role of an expert is, again, vital. So I was watching Welcome to Wrexham last night, and one of the players' wives, unfortunately, had a terrible diagnosis. And Ryan Reynolds suggested she get a second opinion. She got a second opinion, and the diagnosis was the best of the bad diagnoses.
Right.
How can that be?
Ryan Reynolds.
She goes to an expert, and gets a professional diagnosis from a real expert, and then another expert says something completely different. What is an expert then? If
it's not someone who knows all, is it? Clearly.
Well, what's interesting about experts is they need to have clear opinions. If you think about politics as another good example, surely to be good in politics, you need to be coherent on the economy. Yeah. It would make sense.
Yeah.
Yet, if you ask lots of different, not even politicians, but people who analyse politicians, what the right thing to do with the economy is, they will come up with a completely different answers.
Yeah.
I'm always looking at the growth figures for the British economy because I love looking at how different outlets portray what's going on. But one of them always portrays the UK economy as not doing very well. And they are one of the top experts. And every quarter they revise the thing, say, oh yeah, we slightly underplayed it last quarter. We were a bit wrong. They actually did better. And then the next quarter, we were slightly underplayed it and we did a bit better. Essentially, they've got a bias in their system that thinks that the UK is not doing very well. And then every 3 months, they just say, oh yeah, we were a bit underplayed there. Whereas other experts are getting it more accurate and some will be overstating it again. So it's interesting, isn't it, the role of the expert? If you think about, I don't know if you know the expression, the wisdom of crowds, but this is another way, which is actually that a very large amount of lay people of non-experts will, in certain situations, be more accurate than a very few experts. The classic example is guessing the number of marbles in the jar. And I famously ran this at the BBC once as part of a leadership experiment, and was running a workshop, and I thought, oh yeah, I'll do this decision-making thing, and we'll try and get them to guess the number of marbles in a jar. And the method for the wisdom of crowds is each person makes a guess, then you add up all the guesses, and then you average it by the number of people. And the more people you've got, the closer you're going to get to the right answer. And in fact, they guessed to the exact marble, which was like 383. the exact number was what this crowd of people
Was the
came
average.
to, and I was so shocked that it actually worked. But if you'd had a jar of marbles expert, they would have had to pick a number. But the wisdom of crowds, you can net it out to what the aggregate of what everyone thinks.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what's going on in a democracy. My point is that the experts are going to have an opinion, and the nature of them is it's likely that they're going to slightly overstate one way or the other, be more definitive than they should be.
Yeah, so that's the role of the expert. We need them for some decisions, but sometimes the wisdom of crowds will beat them in terms of accuracy.
Exactly. And there's a theory actually also about how companies should make decisions, that in the best number of people for decision making is either 5 or 7. And you need to have an odd number. If you got 5 people, you got an odd number. If you had 6 people, you could get stuck, couldn't you, with a 3v3?
3v3.
But 5 or 7 is the right number of people to make the best decision. If you have 20 people, I mean, too many, and is any individual really that invested in the same way? It starts to become less and less accountable. But with they say the 5 and 7 people, you should have 2 or 3 non-experts in that group. If they are all experts, they're very, very unlikely to change their opinion if they disagree. So let's say you've got 5 people and they're all experts. 3 think one thing, 2 the other. There's not going to be much conversation because the experts are less open to change. Whereas if you had 2 experts and 3 non-experts, the non-experts are open to considering the facts and discussing and thinking about things freshly and looking at the opinion from different perspectives and then make a decision. And again, if you think about how boards work with non-exec directors and advisors and things like that, you have that kind of decision-making there.
Yeah, we're creating those kind of groups that are going to help us make the best decision. What other things are at play in terms of what are the hurdles to making good decisions?
Well, Chris, I read an article in The Guardian that explains this in some of the best detail ever. And one is that we ourselves don't follow the advice that we give others.
Yes, this is sadly true.
Yeah. And let's say the decision to try to heal a relationship through having a tricky conversation. If you had a problem with someone, I would say to you, Chris, why don't you just talk to them? You're a reasonable person. They're a reasonable person. The two of you have got something going on between you. You could go and chat to them and you just say to them, look, I really respect you. I know we've fallen out over something or whatever, but I would advise you to do that. You would advise me?
Yeah.
To do that?
Yeah.
But the thing is, when it's ourselves, we imagine the consequences and we can't get away from imagining how it might go wrong.
Yeah.
I actually don't mind if it goes wrong for you.
Yeah.
In the
you
same
don't
way.
have to deal with the consequences.
I also don't think it will go wrong. But for me, I start to think, if I said that and they said this, then it could get even worse. So there's a real risk aversion in some areas. If we were saying about whether to go for a new job, and you said, I'm thinking about going for a new job, I say, great, go for it. But if you think about it, you're thinking, oh yeah, but I might have to keep going there every day to work. I might not
think about the consequences, think about the risk.
Although so for ourselves, the risks, we're quite good at imagining and feeling, a bit like the pizza. We can feel the feelings. I'm not sure I want this. So there's a sort of aversion to some of the more difficult decisions that we make for ourselves, and even taking a promotion. If you get some people, if they offer a promotion, they think, oh, can I really do it? And often in the coaching role, I'll be saying to them, that, if you can't do it, you just ask for your old job back. You can just say, actually, do you know what? I can't do this. But there's a kind of fear for ourselves that we don't have when we look at things more neutrally for other people.
Sometimes as well, surely we just get overwhelmed by the sheer number of choices we've got in front of us.
We do. Do you?
I'm thinking of things as simple as choosing what to have for breakfast. In the cereal aisle, there are a huge number of choices of various things. Some granolas, some not. Some kid-friendly cereal, some not. Some chocolatey, some not. All different prices, all different grams.
Yeah, I have this actually when I'm booking flights. I was going to try and laugh at you, and I realised when I go into Expedia and I try to book a flight.
Same with booking
and
flights.
I look at all the options, and I think...
Same with travelling to work as well.
Yeah, I think that these are complex decisions, Chris, and that's, again, if we think back to the volatile, uncertain, complex ambiguous, these are complex. When I'm trying to book a flight, I start thinking, well, first of all, what about the price? Then what about the time of day?
Exactly.
What about the airline? Then do I want a direct or am I happy for a slightly cheaper price to have a one stop.
Yeah.
If I'm going to have a one stop, why not have a two stop? Now, what if I can find the one stop with the wrong airline at the wrong time of day, or the two stop with the right airline at the right price, and then the complex factors start to inhibit our ability to make sense of what we're going to do?
Yeah.
How do we resolve that, do you think?
I think we have to decide which of those frames and scales mean something to us and mean the most to us. So if it's the flight, is it the time of day that means the most to us? Landing at exactly the right time.
But if it was the time of day, would you be prepared to pay double?
That's where we've got to then... that's the complexity of it, isn't it? But if that's what matters the most, I think then we know on that scale, where are we then prepared to pay for that experience?
Yes, but the right time of day costs triple now. Is the right time of day still your decision-making criteria?
Then it's going to default, isn't it?
Is it?
So at a certain point, the other scale is now our default scale.
That's just two scales. That's how it works.
Two scales, yeah.
This is how we get stuck.
Yeah.
In complex decisions, is that it's not a perfect world and there's no perfect solution.
No.
We're either on the wrong flight time for the right money, the right flight time for the wrong money.
Not the right airline.
I again try to come back to either value-based or heuristic decision making. Let me tell you about a recent trip I took. I had to go to Switzerland, and I don't like taking flights at 6 a.m. in the morning. I did take a lot of those flights, and each time my alarm rang at 3 o'clock, I woke up feeling like death. like I had a headache.
Oh, no.
And then I'd be at the airport at 4:30 feeling like I wish I was in bed. And then some people do this on their way to their holiday. And you think, do you really want to get up that early for your holiday? Well, that's fine for going on the holiday, but what about coming back? Do you want to get into the airport at 2 o'clock in the morning? In fact, I nearly fell out with my then girlfriend, now wife, once when she booked a flight back from Morocco at 2 a.m. And essentially we had no sleep on the last night of our holiday and arrived back from holiday feeling horrible. But but she might have said, well, yeah, but the other one was 3 times the price. Is it worth X for Y? And this, I think, is a place where a bit of creativity and imagination can come into play, thinking about what trade-offs you're prepared to accept. And again, this is quite hard to do in group decision-making because everyone might be prepared to accept different trade-offs. And this is, again, why corporate decision-making, this is perhaps where it's harder. We can't always work out the exact spreadsheet of options that will produce us an outcome that we're happy with. And maybe, rather than the braver decisions, maybe those complex decisions are harder and more important than whether you're going to do something completely radical once in a while.
Yeah, so we could focus more on the complex than the brave.
Yeah.
Would be an interesting way to sharpen our decision making.
Yeah.
And make it faster.
But how do you do that? I think you have to annihilate various dimensions of the problem. So if there is a ceiling for the cost and that's it, you've just got to eliminate every option that is not. If you're committed to a certain time window, you've got to eliminate all those other options. Yeah. And then in the end, the other ones don't really matter. Toss a coin.
And then we can go with our gut on those things.
You really want to go with your gut. How's your gut been doing these days, Chris? Is it that pizza?
Before we go, Jonna, tell us how we're helping our clients with their decisions.
Well, I think the biggest decision that we help all of our clients and their people with is what to do with their time and effort. So when we are running leadership trainings or sales trainings, or when we are helping people think about their work, everything we're trying to do really is helping them optimize. And for me, optimization is how much time and effort I put into what. The skill part is how effective I am then with that time and effort. So in simple terms, I think one of the biggest things learning and development can do is help people think about where they're going to put their effort. And that single decision is really valuable. If you think about your work tasks, which ones you're going to prioritize and which ones you're going to put effort into, that really, really matters. The next bit is the competence, and maybe that's the multiplier. So if you put your effort into something and you're good at it, it should lead you to results and to outcomes and to success. So we also help people with the skill sets and help them think about how to become better at their core skills in order that when they do put effort in, they get an even better outcome. And I guess all of learning and development is somehow about that. It's about optimizing how the people in an organization work, whether through effort and application or focus and through skill sets and capabilities. And it should be the case that if we can get that prioritization of effort and the motivation to go with it, times that by the skills to do it, then we will get more bang for buck. And in my words, that means we can all go home to our friends and family at the end of the evening on time without working later and later in an inefficient system.
Which is a lovely thought.
That's what I like to do, Chris. And
That's what we'd like to spark.
I do think it's motivating to think if I can get this done, then I can go home. Whereas many people's frame of reference is that they should be working really, really late. And I think that is a short-term success strategy, but a long-term failure one.
There we go. Thank you for listening to this podcast. If you've enjoyed it, please do give it a like and subscribe.
And if you haven't enjoyed it, also please do put some feedback in the comments. We will only get better if you tell us how to improve. And some people have been very vocal about that. But we look forward to hearing from you all how we could get better, including, Chris's decision this morning on his jumper and his pizza. If you've got any further Pizza Express recommendations,
please do let us know in the comments.
Let us know in the comments. Like and subscribe.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, Chris.